Hey guys, my name is Marta, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Elizabeth Barrett Browning's epic poem, Aurora Leigh. This has so far been one of the highlights of my Victober, and my aim with this video is to make you want to read this fantastic work of epic poetry. As I have just mentioned, Aurora Leigh is an epic poem, and it is made up of 9 books in which we get told the story, the character of Aurora Leigh. The book starts in Italy, then moves on to England, then to France, and it then goes back to Italy. The poem was partially inspired by Elizabeth Barrett Browning's own life, and in it she deals with some of her own struggles as a woman and an artist. The book mainly discusses this struggle, and as it will be something that will be constantly mentioned throughout the book and something that will be constantly be compared to the way men had it easier to become authors and to be perceived as artists. This is something that we can find an example of in book 5, where he says, "There it is, we women are too apt to look to one, which proves a certain impotence in art. We send our natures at doing something great, far less because it's something great to do, than haply that we so commend ourselves as being not small and more appreciable to some one friend. We must have mediators betwixt our highest conscience and the judge, some sweet saint's brow must quicken in our palms. All the life in heaven seems slow and cold. Good only being perceived as the end of good, and God alone pleased, that too poor we think. And not enough for us by any means. A Romney, I remember, told me once, we miss the abstract when we comprehend, we miss it most when we aspire and fail." As you can see, he's talking about how a woman will always need some male to support her work for it to be seen as good art, and for how for them it will be harder to create something that will please society, just because this society has been taught that women's work is less worth than that produced by a man. However, the book will not only discuss the struggles of being a woman as an artist, but it will also discuss an artist's lives in general. In fact, we will see how she is constantly reading and creating, and how creating is not something that's always easy. Besides the art of poetry, the book will also discuss the entire art scene in Victorian times. There is a moment where she discusses the theatre industry, for example, and how she says that dramatists were meant to write something that would please an audience if they wanted to be successful. But art is not all the book's about. The book is also a lot about women's lives in the Victorian time. The book in fact features many tropes that are also to be found in other works by Victorian female authors, such as the caged bird, which is a trope that we usually associate with gender, that it's also to be found in this novel. It is in the first book where he discusses that, when he says, "She had lived a sort of caged bird life, born in a cage, accounting that to leap from perch to perch was act of joy enough for any bird. Dear heaven, how silly are the things that live in thickets and eat berries." As you can see, she's discussing how women's life was limited and how they had to find joy in this small space that they could have inside a home. The limits of a woman's life are also to be seen in the rest of female characters that are featured in the novel. In fact, the character of Marian, who is a woman that will marry her cousin Romney and who will later on be abandoned by him, is a picture of what is to be called the fallen woman. Our main character, Aurora Leigh, finds her later in the novel in the streets of Paris, where he is walking with her child. She will end up joining them, and they will end up living a sort of ideal bucolic life, but Marian will tell Aurora the struggles she had to deal with while she was married and how she ended up where she ended up. It's a book that is very feminine in terms of themes and in terms of things that are discussed, but it's a book that, despite that, also has its problems that will most likely be seen and perceived by a contemporary audience, the ending of the novel being one of them. One of the major themes that the book discusses is that of love. In fact, love is defined as something that is more important than art itself, and as that quote indicates, the book will finish by highlighting how love comes before everything. The book will end, without giving much spoilers, the book will end with a marriage, with a romance that I personally don't know how to feel about. Love is something that is constantly being discussed, is something that our main character is constantly striving for, which is something that we can associate with Victorian society standards and the things that women were most focused in the Victorian era, since their life was supposed to be all about marrying a man and living as a married woman inside a house. Moving on from the themes, the characters, since I think I have said all I wanted to say about Aurora as a character. She's an artist, someone who's very focused on creating and on love, and overall someone who's very educated. Something that I'm going to move on and discuss now. With the fact that Aurora is shown to us as this very educated woman from the very beginning, comes the fact that the book is filled with references, something that some readers may struggle with. Elizabeth Barrett Browning was also a very educated woman, and she knew a lot about Greek history and mythology, and constant references to Greek myths and Greek culture are to be found in the poem. For me, that was not always a struggle, since I've learned about some things related to that in high school, but I wanted to mention it because I know that for some readers that might be something that put them off of reading this, or that might difficult the reading experience. However, I don't think that is a problem when it comes to reading the novel, since you can always pick up a critical edition, as I did, and they will come with notes that will provide you all the information that's necessary for you to understand all these references. Also, the fact that the book is filled with references doesn't mean that you must understand them or read about them if you want to fully get the novel. I believe that you can get an overall sense of it without reading them, and I would highly suggest you read it despite you not knowing what the author might be talking about at some moments. Something that I must highlight about the book and the writing, despite the numerous references which make the book be more rich, is the language used. Elizabeth Barrett Browning has a very beautiful writing style, which I fell in love with when I read her collection of poems, Sonnets from the Portuguese, with this being her most famous and important work, is something that is also found in this epic poem. The book is filled with sentences and quotes that I highlighted and that I will probably read and reread over and over again. And to sum up this video, since I think I've already been rambling for a while, I really enjoyed the book. As I said, I gave it 4.5 stars, almost 5, and it would have been 5 if it weren't for that ending, and it is probably going to be one of my favorite reads of the year, and it has for sure been the highlight of my Victober. I really recommend you read it if you are interested in learning more about women as artists in the Victorian era. I really suggest you read it if you like poetry, and I also suggest you read it if you are not a big poetry fan, because I am not usually into poetry, but I did really enjoy it. The fact that it's an epic poem means that it's a poem that tells a full story, so you can interpret it as some sort of novel in verse. And yeah, it's overall a fantastic book, a fantastic and beautifully written poem, and I highly suggest you read it. It's something that is also meant to be read slowly. I read it in 9 different days. Each day I read a different book, and I am most likely going to go back now to some of the scenes that struck me, because I really want to reflect more upon some of them. So yeah, that was all today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below if you read Aurora Leigh and what were your thoughts on it. Give this video a love if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. And I hope your day is going amazing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!